Hello and welcome to Pickle TV. I'm your host, Amanda Kowski. I'm Gary's daughter and I'm visiting family, and Gary's asked me if I would host some episodes of Pickle TV, so here I am. Now, if you found our show on Facebook, YouTube, or any other video sharing site, please check out our website at www.pickle.tv. It's the place to find all the videos Gary will record from all the conferences he will attend. If you like this show and you like these conferences, please tell your friends about Pickle TV. You may also think about subscribing if you really like it. Now in this episode, I'm bringing you another speaker from the Emerging Tech Conference that was held in Dallas, Texas during June 2012. If you're not familiar with the Emerging Tech Conference, you should really check out their website at www.etcdallas.com. On this episode, I bring you a presentation by Mike Pratt. His presentation is BuddyPress, Building Niche Social Networks in the Age of Facebook. Let's watch it now.
I understand that this is the second session in the WordPress track, and the first one got real technical and threw some folks for a little bit. I had to be honest with you, you can get real technical with BuddyPress, and last night I chose not to go that path, so I hope I made the right decision. This is not going to be a very geeky, programmy oriented one, because I'm going to talk about something I've selfishly wanted to talk about because I think it needs to be talked about with BuddyPress, and that is we're going to keep it very 30,000 feet. So I hope that's okay. Before we get started, just to confirm my fears and suspicions, so everybody here loves WordPress, that's why I'm on this track. Who has ever installed BuddyPress install before? So a third, awesome. Who, of the ones that have not, who wants to? And the rest of you just love learning new stuff. Awesome, awesome, okay? The reason I'm keeping it this level is because BuddyPress is not just a plugin that you slap onto WordPress and have a nice day and everything looks awesome, it works great. There's so much thought that is required to go into your planning that if you don't do that, I have a slide up here where I say half of your planning work ought to be planning. You're just going to build a mess. It's never been more true than with BuddyPress. But you can do some really cool stuff. So, I stole, whoops, that's not how it works. This is my first Prezi. It was so fun to make. Let's start it off first. Okay. Again, my name is Mike Pratt. I'm not a real designer. I'm not a real developer. I'm a hack, just like probably all you guys, okay? I don't do development for a living. I do it all on the side. It helps a lot with my day job, where I have actual real developers and real designers that work with us. We have our intern here. Ming, raise your hand. I did not force him to come here, I swear to God. He just showed up. That's not just sucking up, and it's not going to get back to the firm. Don't worry about it. Mike Pratt on Twitter, or you can email me there. So, you got a ton of options if you're thinking of doing something social networky in the development space. You've probably heard of most of these. Anybody heard of Community Engine? Yeah. It's open source. It's really hard to use, but it can do some really badass stuff. Drupal, of course, isn't meant for social networking, but you could squeeze the social network out of it if you really wanted to, and also wanted to spend 2 years in development cycle. Elg is another open source platform, and I love all these platforms. I just like being a smart aleck on it all. Joomla is also like Drupal and very difficult, but very powerful. ModX, has anyone heard of ModX? It started right here in Dallas, run right here in Dallas, okay? And it's gonna give WordPress a run for its money. You mark my word, give it 5 years. Ning, everybody's heard of Ning, right? No? Mark Andreessen started it. It was the social networking in a box. It was amazing. They had their own business model. They almost shut it down. It's trying to breathe back new life. It can make the most amazing social network you've ever saw, but it's just like the Model T. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. Groups is interesting, but it's still very premature. Social Go is also really cool, but it's really segmented, so your use case has to line up with what it can do. But just to give you an idea of all your options. And then, of course, there's BuddyPress. So where do I put BuddyPress into the scheme of things and all of these? It's a lot more flexible and powerful than Ning, but requires more work. and it's about half as powerful as Drupal, but it's easier to do the work that you want to do. So if you like to do work, meaning get under the hood and do some theming, write some little bit of code, or maybe not if you don't want to, BuddyPress is right there. If you want presto magic and it's there and everything you ever wanted, you're probably going down the wrong path, and you can just go get Ning and choose black. But if you want to be able to get really down and dirty and totally develop something amazingly special, then you're going to have to force BuddyPress to do some things it might not want to do, and you might as well just use one of the really big enterprisey ones like Drupal. Okay, so here's the really big question. So why would you even bother to do this? The name of this talk was in the era of Facebook dominance. Why don't we just use Facebook? Everybody's on it. You can be social with everybody. I've got my college friends, I've got my school buddies, I've got my work friends, I've got my family, I've got everybody, right? It's the first question that everyone asks. Why would you even bother? Are you trying to build a better Facebook? Are you trying to compete with them? The real answer is because you have to understand a little bit as, boy, that circle didn't show up. There's supposed to be a circle right there in Facebook. The real answer, I think, is that because Facebook is up here at 30,000 feet with all these overlapping circles, and that's great. But if you notice this, I think anecdotally, I might get some nods in agreement, it tends to dumb down the engagement and conversation because it doesn't get super hardcore onto a topic or everybody tunes out. And when it does, everybody tunes out. See, you know, most of us keep our posting generic, a little bit of family pictures, anything that we know is safe for the 500 friends that we have. Because some of them are college and some of them are family, and I don't want to piss off family with college stuff, and I don't want to bore college guys with my family pictures, so I just keep it in that area, which is fine, because I use it like crazy, and that happens to me as well. So there's all these overlapping circles. So I have up here Bugle Notes. It's the name of my college alumni site. It's a West Point was where I went to school, and so we're all military folks, and that's the name of this little book that you got when you were a plebe that told you all the information you need to know to be a cadet. And it's really niche. There's 37,000 living graduates, that's it. I bet 2/3 of those graduates are on Facebook. So the next question you say is, well, why did you bother building Bugle Notes if almost all of them are on Facebook? And I will show you as I walk through an example of that. There's so much more that you can't do on Facebook that we kind of needed to do to be able to contour the engagement towards our way of thinking and our way of interacting with each other and the affinity circles that we have. Okay? Example, class year, graduation. So I graduated in 1987. Folks tried to make a group in Facebook, 1987 group. But we couldn't really organize in the group, and it just became this mad stream of a mess, and people started just tuning out, and it didn't really accomplish what we wanted. So it was interesting. A natural affinity group that already occurred in Facebook, because there were so many of us on it, just kind of fizzled out, you know, to no one's fault. So you'll see that's why we then decided to build BuddyPress version of Bugle Notes. Okay, so know what your circle is, know what your niche is. Maybe it's gardening. And you know, creating a massive gardening group on Facebook is just too difficult. But that doesn't mean it's either or, and you'll see where I'm going with this. Okay? The concentric circles and the overlaps are what's important. The thing that we did with BuddyPress, excuse me, with Bugle Notes, that turned out to be the best decision we ever made was the realization that when somebody posts something on Facebook, they're almost 100% okay with that same post showing up in Bugle Notes. But when somebody posts in Bugle Notes, less than half the time do they want it going out of Bugle Notes back into Facebook. So the high-level safety stuff of Facebook going in, almost nothing, maybe a third going out. And the reason that that's important is because the activity in Facebook was not showing up in Bugle Notes before we added that functionality, and so the communities felt disconnected. You always had someone going, should I post this in Facebook? I don't feel like going over and posting it in Bugle Notes at the same time. How do we accommodate that? A perfect example is a graduate wants to post pictures of his kids, clearly he'll do that on Facebook, or he just went on a family vacation, and his classmates surely want to see that. So there's no problem with that going into Bugle Notes as well, but making him do it twice is certainly a pain, and you don't want to do that. All right, so as I said, if you don't spend half the time just figuring out, and I will give you examples of what questions to ask as we go along, figuring out what you want to get out of this, before you even start building, you will end up with a mess and wonder how you got there. It may be a beautiful mess and a very pretty site, and it all works perfectly, and nothing happens the way you want it to. You'll be like, how come no one's talking here? How come that group doesn't have any action? What's going on here? Why is that? All right, so this is, I think, a very, very key point here, are these two things I came up with last night. I didn't even determine this until they kind of just popped in my head. Why are people going to connect? There's a big difference between shared interests and shared meta, I'm calling it, okay? Meta information. Both of us went to West Point, meta information. Both of us are a class of 87. That's meta information that ties us together, right? Both of us were infantry officers. That information is a reason for us to show up in the same group digitally. A shared interest is we both like gardening. We want to talk about gardening. But that could be a guy from the class of 92 and the guy from the class of 87 who both like gardening. So think about this. So you can have, if you're familiar with BuddyPress, there's a concept of groups, okay? It's a central organizing concept that exists in the structure of BuddyPress. You create a group, class of 87 group, which we've done, by the way. And then what is the conversation like in the class of 87 group? Is it only things about the class? What if it's about gardening? Should there be a conversation about gardening in the class of 87 group by two members of the class of 87? What about all the class of 87 members that don't care about gardening? Or do we have a gardening group? You follow? That thought process could take you weeks to figure out what you want, because if you don't, all of a sudden you've got all these gardening conversations going on in the 87 group, and the gardening group seems dead, and you don't understand why. And you didn't think about why is that happening, and how could I have steered them to do what I want so they, i.e. users, get the most out of it. So those overlapping circles that I spoke of, okay, both of them cause segmentation of your engagement, okay? Some of it's good, some of it's bad. I apologize, it looked really cool, the font. I just didn't know how big the screen was gonna be, but if it's hard to read, I apologize, I'll show you. The good stuff is that segmentation causes focus, right? Nothing but gardening going on here. Awesome. Organization, you can lay out all the information such that everybody gets it. That's good. The bad, it can dilute the conversation and make everything seem sparse, right? How many conversations about gardening are going on Facebook right now that aren't part of the same ecosphere of gardening? Now, you should, of course, ask, should they be part of it? I don't know, kind of don't care, but you see my point there. It's naturally diluted, so do you want that dilution on your site? Because it can make it seem inactive. And bifurcating the conversation tends to have separate threads going that can't benefit from the shared information. And it's also really disorganized, and that leads to all sorts of problems. Hey, I want to go find out a conversation on gardening, where do I go? I went to the gardening group, but there really wasn't much going on there. I searched for gardening, and everything was happening in the class of 87 group. Why is that? There's a framework called the Infinity Framework, which is similar to Genesis, that got released by Bo Franklin and Marshall Sorensen about 3 months ago. It is a BuddyPress oriented and driven framework. If you Google Infinity Framework, you'll find it. It's kind of in late beta, or it's production release because my site runs on it, but you may not have heard of it because it's relatively new. The guys there and I are friends, and they helped build some tweaks for me for Bugle Notes that I'll show you. And one of them was an activity filter, okay? And we're still working it out right now. That's how this problem still is being presented in our minds, and we're trying to figure it out. But I try to show it right here. So I told you we create class groups, right? We've got one for every graduating class since the 1940 where we stopped. Although I have a guy in that class of 1941 that joined. And I don't know if there are any in class of 1939 that even can log on, but we may have to go back further. It was kind of cool. I mean, he's a World War II vet and he's on our site, so I just thought that was cool. So the association with the group, the class of 1987, makes logical sense to everybody. So we created a filter, which doesn't exist, that said, show me all the stuff that's happening everywhere, the group, class of 1987. And we thought that was it. That's what we need to do because people care about their class, what's happening in my class. But it didn't take into account that the members of the class of 1987 also do stuff in other groups on our site. And all that information wasn't being presented with our activity filter. So then we're like, and we identify, by the way, with a profile field. You have to choose your class year, because that becomes an object of information that we spread throughout the site. So we, of course, associated the class of 87 profile field with the group, and that worked out, but we didn't filter the activity that way. And so people would click on it and they'd be like, I feel like I'm not seeing everything that my classmates are doing. My point being is the conundrum of what do I filter and how it doesn't present itself logically right out the gate. You need to think about what does this user think this filter is doing and why, and what do you want it to do, and what do you want it to get out of it as a result. Which adds another layer. How much of this activity do I want to pull in? Where does it all belong? What filters do I add it to or not add it to? We continue to evaluate this. My point is that if you don't, you will end up, of course, with all this great information. It won't make a whole bunch of sense to everybody, and your activity might take off in directions that you didn't foresee or don't want. Now, if you want to experiment and just see what happens, it's a good way to do that. And I'm not saying that you necessarily shouldn't, but just need to be aware of that. Okay, so these are two screens. I'm going to blow them up. The first one is our welcome login screen, and the second one is our main homepage. And I hope, first thing I want to tell you is that Facebook login, regular BuddyPress login, little pretty stuff, 90% login with Facebook. 90%. The statistics blew me away. We have information that we can't operate without gathering. And so we tweaked a plugin that forces the user to click a couple of drop downs, choose their class, choose their Army branch, choose their cadet company that they were a member of before we let them in. It actually serves, and this is the point I wanted to make, it serves as a neat little spam filter, all right? Because the spam bots don't like to go through that whole process. The human spam bots who just want to get crap onto your site, they actually tend to drop off too. And so we don't even have a 1 + 1 = 2 spam filter or whatever, and we kind of never get spam attacks, which is strange because I know BuddyPress tends to get a lot of spam bot signups on it. So this doesn't look like BuddyPress's default theme. I hope that you recognize that it looks a lot like Facebook. And this is Bugle Notes 3.0. 1.0 looked like BuddyPress's alpha default theme, which was ugly. 2.0 looked like a pretty military color version of BuddyPress's interim default theme. It worked really nice, but it wasn't all that special. The bottom line is that everyone came to the site and was kind of like feeling like they had to learn a new way of going about things. And so I just said, the heck with it, threw in the towel, and then just tweaked the BuddyPress default theme to look like Facebook. And now everybody gets there, and they know exactly what to do. Now, is that cheating? Whatever. Is it lack of creativity? Absolutely. Has my activity gone through the roof? You got it. And so I didn't need to reinvent the wheel, and I'm not trying to win any design awards. I just want I want my alumni and classmates to engage with each other, and that's what's working. same thing with the user profiles. BuddyPress, and for all the JJ and Andy Peatland's work, they have to build something that's usable by the lowest common denominator and everybody's use cases. So they can't sit around trying to say, well, hey Mike, how does all your information fit in so I can make it perfect for that? They have to, I don't want to say dumb it down, they have to make it more generic. So my point is that we took all that for us and took some cues from Facebook again, because they've done so many iterative designs that they've got a lot of it down, and made it easy to digest for graduates. And it made sense in the context of graduating from West Point. Meaning, if I can, it's hard to see, you don't really see exactly. These three groups right here, when someone goes to a profile, are their class, their cadet company, which is the little company that you're in while you're at West Point, and the Army branch they went into when they graduated. That means something to every single graduate. And the first thing they care about are those three affinity circles. And that's what's most important. So we rearranged the contact profile to emphasize all of that. Okay? And by the way, you can't see it, but the stuff on the right there, that's like an exact replica of Facebook events listing. And I'll get to that in a second. All the other stuff like that is stuff to prompt. It's either filtering or it's little menu items to take you to places just like Facebook does. Actually, there's a bit. Okay, this is the next lesson. So for those of you that are familiar with BuddyPress and have downloaded and looked at it, the BuddyPress directories, again, are also lowest common denominators. They are giant strings of users. They're not organized. You've got three filters, which I think is least active, or the last active, the most popular, or whatever, but it's not really a directory. If you don't know what to type in the search field, finding that thing you're looking for is going to be a tedious paging search after page after page after page. Not super useful. So we learned that lesson because people bitched about it. Users. And you don't know it until you actually just install it and let them go play with it. So we thought you could either go the route of create that unbelievable search facility that Facebook has, you know, you just start typing and crazy stuff comes up and you use it a lot. That's pretty super advanced. We don't really have that at our disposal. But we do have the ability to let people browse easier, right? So we recreated the directories so I can show you. Search is still there, obviously. Browsing people, and you know when you browse something it's easy to browse if it's got a good organizational structure. What do you guys browse when you're on the internet? You browse catalogs, whether it's, you know, Amazon or whatever. And if they lay it out nicely, they allow you to browse, as opposed to type in that you're looking for a black cocktail dress, or whatever. But you can browse cocktail dresses pretty easily. That helps people connect, because when they come to our site, we got classmates looking for classmates. We got buddies that serve together looking for buddies that are in different classes, and we want them to be able to find each other. So here's an example of three of the directories that we rebuilt, and you'll see what it is. So, first one, these are classes with their class crest that go on their rings, and they're arranged by decade. And you can't see here, but we actually discovered something last week when we rolled it out. These are the actual pictures that are their class crest. You can see this progression of design from like the 30s to the 40s to the 50s. It's pretty cool. And they got real modern, and then like after 2000, all the 9/11 ones were incorporated into the class rings and stuff. But people browse this. We've got how many members are showing up in each class, and they just go there, they click, they find what they're looking for. It's super easy. Did the same thing with cadet companies. These are the guidons that every graduate has blazoned into their brain, that because that associated with their company while they're there. Go right down there, click on it, find a buddy, etc. You get the general idea. And then one last one. This might be more familiar to you. Then there's just the general interest group stuff that nobody associates with because of a piece of meta information. They just care about the topic. So this is a very browsable one, because I can't presume that any member wants to be a part of any of these. I need them to go there, click on them. We've got the join buttons right here, okay? If you notice, I don't know if I can go back. Let me see if I can go back. There are no join buttons on this directory. point I bring that up is not to have you put join buttons or not put join buttons, but to say, well, why would you not put join buttons? Because no one's going to join one of these groups. They're already a member of the one they belonged to because they checked it off when they signed up. But they're going to find their buddies in other companies. That's why they're there. This one, nobody's a member of when they join. They come down here and they're like, I want to join the combat gardening, we call it, the politics group. We have one called Free for All, which is free for all, things like that. So finding information is not just a search field. Matter of fact, there are theories out there that argue the better your information is organized and laid out, a la those directories, a la something I'm about to show you, the less your search field will be used. Because people are finding what they need based upon that. So Facebook's practice of hyperlinking your name wherever you do something is how a lot of people actually go into your profile and do stuff. They just keep clicking on it, right? And you're used to that process. That process exists in everything you do when you build a social network. You say to yourself, how can I present the information so that if someone's doing this, they can, and they change their mind and want to do something else, it's almost a menu system, and they don't even realize it, wherever they are. The organization of the information leads them to finding other stuff. I call that user-based logic, right? Which is like, they're reading a post on the class of '86, they see a buddy, they click on his name, that takes them into the infantry group, which leads them to a conversation on a tailgate at the next football game. Make it obvious, and connect dots. Connect dots is easy to throw out there. What do I mean by that? You should never have someone go to a page on a social networking site where they say, I want to do something next, and they have to go off that page to somewhere else to start their search to begin to find it. Because, now yes, that may be a complete train of thought change on their part, and that's fine, that's not the use case I'm speaking of. What I'm really talking about is they're on we're running our class reunion, which is why we just launched 3.0. So our 25th reunion is in fall, and we made a custom reunion page that all classes can use, and we're using it as kind of a prototype. If you're on the reunion page and you see the event, which is just like Facebook events, for the football game that Saturday, you should be able to get into that event, and the next thought you might be is, I want to RSVP for that event. You should be able to do that. And then you want to see who's RSVPing for that event. All those trains, those dots need to be connected. If you don't connect them, and they ask the question, I want to see who's going to this event, and you got to go through 3 other pages just to get to it, you haven't connected the dots properly. Okay, like I said, search is a last resort. I'll come back in a year and tell you if the data bears that theory out, because we'll know how many people are using the search field, but we're hoping it's not a lot. So here's another example. So, God, you really can't see it, I'm sorry. This is a list of events for our reunion. That's my class crest. This is our class page, okay? That really hard to see sub-menu item up there are all the tabs that we have for the reunion, including hotel information, the event listing. There's a ticketing section where we integrated a full ticketing process into it, which incorporates the meta information from the user, so he doesn't have to fill it all out, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's another event listing, and it shows up all around. So I go to the activity stream, you're seeing stuff just like you see on Facebook. You know, Joe Smith, RSVP for the tailgate. And he sees that, and I'm finding from the usage reports that people are coming to the main page, and instead of clicking on the Reunion Central link I put up there, some are just clicking on Joe Smith just RSVP for the tailgate, poof, tailgate, and he's there, and then he goes in, so the train is kind of working. We're gonna open up for questions if you've got any, so we'll go back to any screen you want. The next one, topic that requires lots of thought is the concept of creating the information that goes in there. Now, most of it's going to be created by users, but that's not really where I'm going with this. A response to a post, of course, is content. But you may have a very topically oriented site like gardening, and you want subject matter experts to create. And you have to ask yourself, do I want to open that up to the whole world? Or do I want to limit it? What are the pros and cons of doing that? We don't have a blog turned on this site because we had one on version 2, and the only people that blogged were the ones that wanted to do shameless self-promotion of crap they had going on, you know, in their business and stuff like that. And it just got really, we got a lot of, not hate mail, but people like, well, why are you letting Jim write this stupid post on how awesome his company is and can you support it and all that? It just seemed really spammy. So we shut it down and no one said a word. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have a blog, but we didn't have a need for it. You know, just like Facebook doesn't have blogging kind of either. And who writes notes on Facebook? So who is creating the content? What is the content that they're creating? What's that?
Just like history.
Yeah. So what kind of content do you want them to create? And then the bottom one is probably a big debate everywhere you go. But the reason I think Facebook was so successful and MySpace kind of fell by the wayside was that because Facebook realized that you don't have to moderate or control everything, but if you provide a little bit and ask for people to follow a few rules or kick them out, you can really contour an experience that just lets them go crazy, right? MySpace was the whole free love, it's anything you want, you know, and all that, and it became obviously a cesspool that people were just like, this sucks. It is. And who's been to Facebook, or excuse me, MySpace in the last 6 months? Nobody. You know what it looks like? Facebook. They've added controls. They're trying to moderate and curate the experience, not what people say. See, people go freak out. They're like, censorship, you know? They're not curating what you say. They're curating the experience. Because who really wants to change the color scheme of Facebook? I mean, really, like 4 hacks on the side feel like changing it from the Facebook blue to red. Who cares in the end, you know? So we don't give our users the ability to contour all that. Hey, make your profile page look really cool the way you want it to be. They don't care. If they want to do that, they can go build their own site somewhere else. The thing we curate, so for example, has anyone been to, I'll just make one up there. There are a lot of BuddyPress built sites that open up group creation to all users. To a site, I mean almost to a site, it looks like MySpace cesspool. 90% of them still use the default crazy little like alien icon for the group. You know, it's bad. So all those class crests and guidons and everything else, I and my team did. Why? Because we picked perfect images, we made them look exactly the same, and the uniformity works wonders for everybody when they're just looking for stuff, right? This whole express your individuality with your group icon and stuff like that, it can make a giant mess. Now, does that mean we're censoring? No, it's just nobody really wants to create a group and go through the whole process because it looks junky. We put a button that said, if you want to create a group, click this button, and it sends a message to me with information on the group you'd like to create. And almost always we work with them and say, hey, that's a great idea. We didn't think of having like a skiaholics group because there's so many graduates who love to ski. We created it, we work with them, it all looks good, and it fits in, everybody's happy. I don't know why I put this screen in here now. This is a blown up picture of an event. But this should probably be in the connect the dots screen, I'll tell you. But the reason I put it in is because activity of the event, the map, it should look very, very familiar, and it's working like gangbusters. We're really, really pleased with it. People are RSVPing for it and stuff. The next thing. BuddyPress is a juvenile just out of grade school in this regard with privacy and protecting information. When I mean privacy, I don't mean privacy of the outside world. I mean within the world of BuddyPress. Now, if it's just a group of gardeners, that may not even matter. In the large 30,000-foot Facebook world, who you allow to see what becomes a much different story, as you can imagine, and I'm sure you're well aware. And you know, some people like to lock down their profile for public search. Now, our site, if you remember that login splash screen I showed you, is shut off to Google, it's shut off to everything. Nothing is exposed. We're not looking for new members. We know the names of all 37,000 graduates. It's just our little sandbox. And no one wants their stuff out there. That they love that. So it's on complete lockdown. So privacy within, for us, is almost a moot point. I mean, matter of fact, we kind of go away from it. There's an anecdotal story I'll tell you, and you may or may not find interesting. So West Point allowed women in 1976. So when I got there in 1983, women had only graduated for a couple of years, and so it was still pretty raw. There's a company, cadet company called B1. They were organized in regiments, so 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th regiments. So this is B Company of 1st Regiment. And every company has a mascot, and they named themselves Boys 1, with the idea that they would drive out all classes of women in every year that they were there. And that was allowed to go on for about 10 or 15 years. So while I was there, girls were driven out of Boys 1. That is gone now, and it's like anathema. You would never do that at West Point now. Things have changed a lot in the last 25 years. Well, I got a call from the guys in the class of 80, 81 from Boys 1 who said, we'd really like to make Boys B1 group private. I'm like, well, it is private. Nobody from the outside world can get in. It's just us 37,000 girls here. Why is that? No, we're a tight group of guys, and we really would like it to be private. What it ended up meaning was, we don't want to look like idiots to the rest of the graduates because we want to flame royal women in our little private group. So we don't have private groups, and their Discord has a tough time coming out. So just as an anecdotal story on privacy, BuddyPress, and I'll get to the roadmap in a second, is going to be adding what is currently and has always been a plug-in for privacy. It's going into Core to allow you to do basically what Facebook allows you. You know, lock down your profile to certain groups, certain members, friends only, that kind of stuff inside of your network. Okay? But it really boils down to a lot more than just privacy. It talks about, as I said, group access, what moderation you allow or don't allow. And again, at the very bottom, don't forget that privacy has a lot to do with what comes in via Facebook plugins, for example, or Twitter, and what is allowed out. Of course, we allow postings out, but we default to not. And like I said, 20% maybe click. I think part of it's because they just don't feel like clicking, and the other part is they just don't want it going out. Not because they're afraid of the information being out there, because I just don't think they want to bore people with, you know, that prank we played on each other back in 1962 kind of thing. All right, this is the geekiest it'll get. It's the last couple of slides, and if you don't want to listen to geeky, you can tune out. Okay, so the current state of BuddyPress is that it really is ready for prime time. You can run big time production sites on it. It's going to need to get, in my opinion, to 1.8. It's currently on 1.5, about to get 1.6, just went into beta. It's going to need to get to 1.9, 2.0 to be a scary, scary competitor to everybody out there on the planet, but it's not there yet. If you guys are, I'm not trying to scare you off. Installation is super easy now. It used to be super hard, and there's some cool features coming. If you're familiar with the new version of BuddyPress, the bulletin board, which is the engine that fuels all the forums and the activity inside of BuddyPress, it's not fully integrated yet, and it's about to be in the 1.6 release. I have not even played with the beta. It came out 2 or 3 days ago. Okay, they're going to package a child theme into BuddyPress, which will be a huge, huge help for those that are new to it. I'll explain that when I talk about the theming.
They already do, or?
No, they're going to. It's in the beta, which is available. It's packaged in. Okay. And what I mean by that, everybody knows child themes, WordPress, I hope. BuddyPress comes with a massive default theme, and if you want to tweak it, you need to make a child theme. We'll get to that. The BuddyPress admin bar, which is not the same as the WordPress admin bar, will be joined at the hip and become one. Privacy's going in to Core. Amazing moderation capabilities are going into Core, and a whole bunch of usability stuff is going to be added in. Without getting too deep into the install process, I would just like you to focus on a couple of questions before you really get into it. Do you have an existing WordPress site that you're trying to add BuddyPress onto? If that's the case, you should get lots of Red Bull, because the concepts of them aren't even the same. I'm not talking design and programmatic stuff. I'm talking about the concept. Your WordPress blog is a blog. You may have some content types and do some really cool stuff. You may have a commerce section set up and all that. You don't just add social media onto it. When people say that, they sometimes mean, no, I mean you can share posts on my site. That's not adding social media onto your site. That's allowing people to share your stuff. I'm talking about turning it into a social network where you have to go, what role does that blog post play in this network? How, that alone is a day of thought. So if you have an existing one, people have gotten into more trouble and had more frustration by trying to force those two together and wonder why it's so hard than anything else. If you're starting from new, then all you got to do is just get your little whiteboard out and start thinking about what you want the users to do. Multi-site or not? This is a bit of a thorn in my side, this concept of multi-site. I started multi-site on Bugle Notes back when BuddyPress was in alpha. And for those of you who don't know what that means, multi-site, because it's all been merged into WordPress now, WMU it used to be called. You can make blog after blog after blog after blog, and people can create their own blogs. And then you say to myself, why do I want 37,000 graduates creating their own blogs? So we turned that off. And then we said, what are we going to do with the blogs? Maybe we can do some stuff with the blogs. And we made one blog into an announcements blog, right? Where the post was the announcement. And that kind of worked. But now it all is being baked in, and we actually don't have a need for any blogs. So the only people, in my opinion, this is, I don't think too drastic of an opinion, that need multi-site capability are those ones that want to go out there and build a blogging network, right? Where people are going to manage their own, they're like companies that manage blogs or something like that. Most of us, you just want to build a social network. And lastly, the install is like almost as one click as WordPress itself. Much, much simpler. You don't have to be doing all sorts of keys and authorization and things like that you used to. So theming, and I think this is my last slide. Who's built their own WordPress theme before? Awesome. Who has changed the PHP in one file in a theme that they've used on their site, in addition to those folks? Yeah, lots of folks. Okay, for those of you who have not done that, who's tweaked the CSS? All right, so almost everybody in here except for a few. That's not what the world of BuddyPress theming is like, okay? The BuddyPress, and there's a reason, it's not a fault of anybody's. The reason that BuddyPress's default theme is so massively complex is I want you to think anecdotally how many different screen types you go to in Facebook, right? You go to a group page, you go to an activity stream, you look at an event page, you look at a profile page, you're looking at your privacy settings, you're looking at your profile edit settings, all that. There are so many screens that have to be templated for BuddyPress to even work. It makes your little single blog post, archive blog post theme look retardedly simple. So who's going to go out there and just build one from scratch? The BuddyPress core team, that's who. There are theme developers that don't do that. So reinventing the wheel is almost like, why would you just, poke a needle in your eye? All that said, it forces you though into a certain path, which can be frankly a pain in the butt. Because you need to understand how child themes work, right? This Bugle Notes site that we built, for those of you that don't know how a child theme works, very, very simply, you take the default theme, you go into your the folder that's required, no need to get specific, and you start copying files from the default and then tweaking them. Because the WordPress system looks for the default, but it says, wait a minute, oh, there's one that's a copy and it's in the child theme, I'll use it first. If it doesn't find it, it just falls back to default. Very simple. So you're like, you know what, I don't really like the way the profile field looks, I'm going to move the avatar over to the right. That requires some HTML and PHP tweaking. So you just copy the file, move it around, Bob's your uncle. I think 90% of the files are child theme files from my book Bugle Notes one. So we've ended up tweaking almost the entire one, and I still would not have started from scratch because the tweak isn't like this 500 line template for the profile, and I just wanted the avatar over to the right. I copy the file, I move the avatar over to the right, I leave the rest alone. Okay? But it's a complex system. On top of that, has anybody here ever, in Firefox with debugger or whatever like that, just inspected the HTML and styling elements on Facebook? All right, it's not for the faint of heart. All right? They have, if you don't know how that all works at that level, they have computers that talk to each other that generate the code on the fly based upon the page that's being rendered for all 800 million users. So the classes and the IDs for just one element are almost non-readable by humans because they were put together based upon all sorts of stuff from multiple servers. I mean, if you wanted to restyle Facebook, it would take a PhD. But it's a very smart system and it works fantastic. A little of that happens in BuddyPress because there's so many loops being run and so much information. Not to scare you, that's why it's good to use the default theme and then just tweak it as necessary. All right? The tweak is not just to make red blue. The tweak is to do things like, I'm going to go back because I think this is done right. Yeah, I'm going to go back. And then I'm going to end. Okay. All that data up there was in a laundry list. It just didn't look good. All right? So that required some HTML tweaking. Not a big deal. I didn't change any of the loops or any of that stuff. I didn't change the class names. I didn't change anything. I just rearranged the HTML. And then I styled it. And it looks nice. And that was it. But that was a tweaking of a child theme. So those kinds of things are very commonplace. So you let JJ and the crew at BuddyPress work on making sure that, you know, when they click on group, or they click on that venue, it does all the right things, or they click on that activity stream, it does all the right things. And you just make it look the way you need it to look for your guys. That is it for me, and if anybody wants to talk questions, I'm happy to.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this week's session. Make sure to come back next week for another video from the Emerging Tech Conference. If you like what Pickle TV is doing, I would ask you to consider dilldomains.com the next time you buy a domain name or website hosting. Dilldomains.com is my daddy's GoDaddy reseller account, plain and simple. So if you like GoDaddy, or if you use GoDaddy, please consider using Dill Domains instead. In other words, buy your GoDaddy stuff from my daddy. Well, that's all for today. So until next week, this is your host, Amanda Kalski, saying goodbye and thanks for watching.